And then we get into the training because we got to make sure that YouTube is keeping YouTube safe from those pesky disinformations from actual practicing medical practitioner doctor guys. Yeah, YouTube's got to keep YouTube safe from the opinions of actual medical experts. But moving on, let's get into the training session. The re-education. Let's get into it. About the training, 7 questions, 15 minutes. We want you to create and share your content confidently. In this training, you'll see scenarios related to the policy you violated. You have unlimited attempts to get it right. I didn't even notice that it said that the first time. I have unlimited attempts to say I love Big Brother, to bend the knee, to give them the answer they want. I'm proud to say I got all 7 questions right on the first attempt. The only problem, and I've brought it to YouTube's attention time and time again, I still don't know what portion of that 34 minutes and 56 seconds allegedly purportedly violated YouTube's terms of service as relates to medical misinformation, but whatever. I got all of it right on the first try because I am so SMRT. Policy training, question 1 of 7. In a video, a creator says that nobody in Jamaica has died of COVID-19 because it's an island and islands were not really affected by the pandemic. Is this a violation? Now here's a little free, let me just pause it here. First, I'm going to give everybody the link. Embed URL, I think this is it. If you haven't seen this video, let me take myself out, do the proper introduction here. If you haven't seen this video yet, I did post it on YouTube and Rumble. That's the Rumble link. Ironically, posting it on YouTube. Look, this is, okay, let's back it all up to the beginning, people. I've been a good boy. I'm a good boy. I don't break rules. Occasionally I swear. I've been told I swear too much, so I'm going to try to keep it cool. I'm going to go back to the front door instead of the F, and I'm going to go shut the front door. All right. In my thousands and thousands and thousands, because I think it's literally up to 4,000 videos, give or take, on YouTube, I have received all of 1 warning per channel, and one of the warnings was an interview I did with Dr. Francis Christian, on the street interview during the Ottawa protest, which was flagged as medical misinformation. Oh yeah, that's right. The other warning I got was on my main channel, my interview with François Amelaga, the Cameroonian Quebecois who was jailed for violating the COVID rules, the tickets, etc. Medical misinformation. And I tweeted out, and I dare say kind of irritated YouTube. I was like, can you just tell me what part of the video qualifies as medical misinformation that whatever. All right. YouTube has implemented a new policy because hitherto, or up until now, they would give you a warning, but the warning never goes away. So basically, it's just like an extra strike. They give you a warning. We won't tell you what you did wrong, but we think you might have done something wrong. Here's your warning next time you get a strike. Now I just totally lost my train of thought. Oh, that's right. Now they've changed their policy a little bit to allow you to take a re-education training seminar that allows you to have your warning removed if, after passing their seminar, you don't break the rules like a naughty boy for another 90 days. So I did a whole video breaking it down yesterday because it's Orwellian, Kafkaesque, whatever the hell it is. It's ridiculous. But, and I forgot to put it in the video yesterday, I think that they're implementing the exact same protocol that Barnes and I worked into the Rumble terms of service, which are that certain things have to lapse over time. There has to be a period of time after which warnings, strikes, they just get erased, period. A year, I don't know, 6 months, I forget what the exact term we put on it was. There's that. There's also the idea that you can't retroactively flag videos that might not have been contravening of whatever the hell the terms of service were at the time later on. The François Amelaga warning that I got on my main channel for medical misinformation from the man who was jailed for, I forget how long, for violating COVID protocol, fined almost $100,000. That warning came 3 months after the interview. The warning of the medical misinformation from Francis Christian, I think he might have actually been proven right in whatever he said during that interview. So their warning for medical misinformation as of February 2022 might not be medical misinformation as at, I have no idea what month it is. I'm looking at my computer. October 2023. It's all preposterous, it's all ridiculous, but the questions, and I want to bring up one question in particular, because I was so flabbergasted by this question, I didn't know what to think of it. Advice for anybody taking an LSAT. Let's just go to the question. It was about the schmishmortion. No, not the cell tower. Here we go. Was it this one? Was it this one here? Come on. Not Pablo. Was it Safia? Here we go. Listen to this. Listen to this. It's going to blow your mind what they throw in to their re-education camps on YouTube. Because in case you thought certain shmushmortion procedures might be risky, they're telling you. 7. Safia recorded a conversation with her friends where she claimed she became infertile after a chemical abortion using the prescription medications mifepristone. I don't know what that is. Whatever. Safia urged her friends to avoid chemical abortions or else they will also become infertile. Is this a violation? Bing, 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 bing. That's right. This example violates our policy because it promotes misinformation about the side effects of the chemical abortion method, which is deemed safe by health authorities. While we may make exceptions for content in which creators describe their or their family's firsthand experiences, we do not allow content promoting misinformation about safe abortion methods, such as telling others that they will become infertile after using methods deemed safe by health authorities. Now, okay, so I'm stopping it there. Safe. And by the way, just so this doesn't get a warning on YouTube, yes, that's right. That was medical misinformation. And you know that they're medical misinformation when they come out with these examples that are always categoric. Alls, don't do it, this will happen, definitives, whatever. But what a peculiar example in their re-education camps to get you to conceptually internalize it's a safe and effective. Okay, anyhow, so that's what I did yesterday. While I was solo parenting, going crazy all week. Holy crab apples. On Friday, I had 3 kids out of school for whatever the reason, ped day or something, 2 friends with them. We went to a petting zoo. We went to Strawberry Girls, this place where you can, petting zoo and whatever. Life is expensive when you have, I'm the youngest of 5 kids. You take 5 kids to McDonald's, holy crab apples. You take 5 kids to a petting zoo, they want ice cream. Holy crab apples. All right, and by the way, I know I shared with you my shopping faux pas, errors of the week, where I bought gluten-free Annie's pasta, and then I bought vegan Annie's chicken strips. Like, these things were in the aisles with regular chicken strips and regular pasta. I forgot to highlight the other blunder that I made. Also in the pasta section, I got mac and cheese, Wakanda Forever version. I opened it up and I'm looking inside. I was like, why do the mac and cheese look like that? I didn't realize I got Wakanda. I'm not a pervert, but can we agree that they're highlighting boobies here in a way that's not normal? Wakanda Forever mac and cheese. I'll tell you what. I want politics to be out of my food. Anyhow. I'm told it doesn't taste any different, but the pasta looks a little different. Whew. All right. Good evening, everybody. How goes the battle? We're going to see when Barnes gets here. It's another week where it's tough to remain optimistic. It's tough to be distracted by the stupidities of life like Wakanda Forever, mac and cheese, when the world seems to be burning and our elected officials are the ones throwing the gasoline on the fire. We know what's going on. We're going to talk about it tonight because you can't not talk about it, but then we're going to talk about some other stuff because it also, cripe at some point. People want to stop talking about it, but what a luxury that some have to not want to talk about the wars that are afflicting other parts of the world. The world is on fire. It's gone from Ukraine on fire to the Middle East on fire yet again. And when I say that our elected officials are bumbling idiots, corrupt buffoons who are, I don't know if it's accidentally or deliberately, gleefully or reluctantly throwing gasoline on the fire, they are. You appreciate the world that we're living in. Not so long ago, we were, and I say we, as in the Canadian government, saluting Nazis in Canadian Parliament. Financing, subsidizing, arming Nazis in another part of the world. The U.S. government, as we're going to talk about tonight, arguably, but not so arguably, financing terrorism. The U.S. government, arguably, but not so arguably, abandoning billions and billions of dollars of weapons in a debacle, an impeachable debacle of a withdrawal from Afghanistan. And where do those weapons seem to be ending up? You guessed it, everywhere. And it's not like, they're out of their they're out of their pay scale, they're out of their competency scale. They are. We've got a drama teacher, and I never held this against him, because a drama teacher can still be a perfectly competent human being. It just so happens that the drama teacher that we have as Prime Minister of Canada has proven himself to be a woman groping. Yes, you could look it up. He apologized for it. 2 times ethics breaching. Yes, confirmed. Broke the Conflict of Interest Act twice. Blackface wearing more times than he can count. Vitriolic, awful, scum of a human. I forgot what the point of this sentence was. We've got that guy leading Canada. And then we've got these other underlings. They get elected, so we've got no one to blame but ourselves. This is Melanie Joly. Ironically enough, I won't say relying on her looks. She's jolie in French means beautiful. And I don't know, other than, pretty smiles and nice photo ops, what makes her competent for the job that she's adopting now. But when I say that her boss is a drama teacher playing dress up, and then it looks like she's a drama teacher playing dress up, this is her military garb, people. This is like when they're addressing the conflict in the Middle East, they've got to dress the role. And I have no doubt she went to Army Surplus and said, look, I got some serious stuff to deal with right now. Okay, I'm a very busy woman. Because that was her excuse for why they were so slow, arguably, or why they were not all that fast to evacuate Canadians from Israel and the conflict there. Remember the time when I was pressing Marc Garneau, the man who got elected in my riding where I ran for federal office, the astronaut. I was like, hey, Marc, nice that you're campaigning in this federal election. How many Canadians are left in Afghanistan? How many Canadians are left in Afghanistan? I kept on tweeting this at him like a pain in the ass because I am one. I can full-heartedly recognize it. Sorry, I took out the wrong person. I kept on tweeting at Marc Garneau, how many Canadians were just abandoned in Afghanistan with that debacle of a withdrawal? I never got an answer from Marc Garneau, but I'll tell you what tweet did get an answer from him. When I said, everybody hates Justin Trudeau, even Marc Garneau hates Justin Trudeau. And then he had to protest a little too hard. How dare you say that? You keep my mouth, his name out of my, I don't know, you keep my name out of your, something along those lines. Garneau never had an answer for how many Canadians were left in Afghanistan. When asked why Canada's response was seemingly slow to the crisis in the Middle East and getting Canadians out of Israel, her response, according to Blacklock's reporting, and I didn't read the context, I didn't read the full article because it's behind a paywall. I'm a very busy woman, is what she said. Busy playing dress up. And I said this is, I really want to know this question. Where the hell did she get this outfit and how much did it cost? You imagine, like, we're at the world's at war now. And so Melanie Joly has to go out and get the most Soviet looking brown shirt of a military garb to play the role. Where did she get it? I want to know first off, and how much did it cost? Now, relying on the aggregate knowledges of the interwebs, if we look here, I am certain smarter people than me can determine where this came from based on the pins. Now, I don't know if it's fancy. I don't know if it's literally secondhand. How much did it come from? How much did it cost? Where'd you get it? And if anyone is wondering why I'm asking, I'm not trying to be petty and juvenile. Our country is being destroyed by an ethics-breaching, woman-groping, blackface-wearing drama teacher and his incompetent underlings who think leadership is a question of playing dress-up. They do, and it irritates me. All right, now, everybody. Oh, the flipping clock behind me. Whoever got that for me, I don't know why it keeps dropping an hour. I don't know why. It's supposed to be an atomic clock, and now I'm getting a little bit scared about atomism. All right. Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone's not too frustrated. Standard disclaimers. YouTube, Big Brother, I took my class. I'm very good. I now know that mifepristone is a safe and effective way of giving yourself the schmishmortion. Totally safe. And now, because they made me provide that as an answer, now I question and wonder, and I assume the exact opposite, but what do I know? I'm just a buffoon lawyer. All right. Cheryl Gage has a nice $10 super chat, and then we're going to get to the rules, all the stuff, and then Barnes is going to come in. Question number 8. A certain Canadian doctor is later proven right. YouTube will A, apologize, B, remove strikes and warnings, C, just kidding, you still have to undergo re-education. I will have already undergone it. Cheryl Gage, thank you very much. Everybody, I appreciate all of these super chats, Rumble rants. Bear in mind, YouTube takes 30% of that. So if you want to support the channel without also supporting YouTube, there's 2 ways to do it. There's 3 ways. Rumble rants on Rumble. Rumble typically takes 20% of that. The rest of the year, they're taking 0, and then they're going to go back to that later on 2024. Better to support also a platform that actually supports free speech. The best way to do it is to go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and for $7 a month or a discounted rate of $70 a year, there are tons of exclusive goodies at vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and some people actually support us with more because they love what we do. There's a third way, and I should probably plug our merch more often than I do. Merch. If you go to vivafry.com, I happen to have broken my Wanted for President coffee mug, so I'm going to have to order another one. But I still got the shot glass on my desk. I keep saying to the kids, don't bring glass into my office, and then I do it, and then sure enough, it breaks. Hold on. Dude, I'm taking myself out again. Wanted for President. It's beautiful. So you can go to vivafry.com and get merch. But let's do this here. What's up with Barnes boy Alex Mercurius going full simp for Hamas? He basically, I don't know who that is. Oh, Alex from the Duran. I have not heard what he said about it. And I'm not gonna look. There's a lot of people with wildly different perspectives on this. And I don't know what he said, so I can't characterize it or accept that characterization as accurate. I say there is nuance to this entire debate, but not when it comes to Hamas, just when it comes to the proportionate, proper response that will actually potentially, for once and for all, resolve the problem instead of just contributing to this cyclical, decades-long, vicious circle of violence. But there's a lot of people taking some interesting positions out there on the interwebs. Okay, now let me just go check out something here on Rumble. Rumble is good, and let me go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and we are good on Rumble and Viva Barnes Law. Oh, Barnes is in the house. Okay, good. I had a couple more things. I will get to the rest tomorrow. I'll go live again later this week and touch on some of the Canadian stuff. And for those who don't know, we start live on YouTube, Rumble, and Locals. We'll do 1 or 2 subjects on YouTube. Then we end on YouTube, go to Rumble exclusively. Then after that, we go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com for the after party. We take the tips there, answer some questions, and have a great time. All right, and I haven't opened it yet, but a Hawaiian gin is on the menu for tonight. Okay, Barnes, coming in. 3. Sorry, that was too fast. 2, 1. Sir, how goes the battle?
Good.
What do you have over your shoulder? If I'm looking... Wait, that looks like America. I can see the proverbial wang of America, the Florida part. What book do you have, Robert?
It's a Kevin Phillips, The Emerging Republican Majority, one of the great political analysts and populist advocates over the past half century. He passed away this past week, so it's in honor and recognition of him. And if you want to understand American politics, even though this book was published in 1969, written actually in 1966, it's a great political biography of American politics going back to its founding. And it's he's without question the greatest political analyst in the history of the United States.
Now, Robert, I'll bring up the chat because maybe I've heard briefly what the Duran's position is. They're definitely more, I guess. Yeah,
McCorris has not been for simping for Hamas. So, in fact, he was very critical of what Hamas did. He just laid out the geopolitical circumstances and has been on other shows with people who voice more of a Palestinian sympathizing perspective. But he hasn't been on the Hamas side. So I think that's there's some people who think that unless you're for everything that Israel is doing, that you're pro-Hamas. In the same way that there's people that think that if you're unsympathetic to the Palestinian political leadership, that you're just a token of Israel's politics. Reality is most people are in between. The most people, like our poll on our board, the most Americans, similar to the people on our board, overwhelmingly choose Israel over Palestinian. But you have about a third or so, give or take, different times, that are neutral on the subject. In other words, don't want us to be involved, don't want us to be engaged directly ourselves in there to make it worse. But there's very few people in the United States outside of the left and the and certain Muslim populations in the U.S. and the Western world that actually side with Hamas. That's pretty small. There's more people that side or say they sympathize with Palestinians, but that number generally, the more people and on our board it's by a 12-1 margin. Even within the Democratic Party, they still lean Israel, even though the millennial generation is the least pro-Israel amongst Democrats of any group. But there's a tendency to polarize in this context, that either you're an Israel simp or you're a Hamas simp, when the balance of arguments presents some difference between the two, I think.
Well, we now know, I guess we know a little bit more of the initial terrorist attack and the delayed response, or the time it took to get a response. Some explanations as to, they were relying too much on the Iron Dome and neglected the portion above the fence and below the Iron Dome. A real good video on that by History Legends. I think he's a Canadian. I used to follow him before he started breaking down the Ukrainian war, and a lot of his analysis was really apt. I think that History Legends, I think, is the name of the channel on YouTube. But he did a real good breakdown on his explanation as to why he thought essentially Israel has become over-dependent on technology and surveillance, and that the Hamas successfully exploited that over-dependence. And he thinks that's the most likely reason for its security gaps, that Israel has an advantage militarily, historically, because of its technological edge, but it may have become over-dependent on that technology edge. And I think that's why there's an internal debate currently within Israel as to the next steps beyond targeting Hamas, as they have with the various air attacks and other attacks over the past week. Yep. There's a legitimate, it appears to me, debate within Israel about whether to go into a ground war in Gaza. I don't think that's a well-advised idea. Personally, I don't think doing what Hamas wants is probably a tactically savvy decision. And I think at least some are going back and forth on what to do about it. And then also credit to Joel Pollack, editor at Breitbart, who, understandably initially reacted with anger at what took place, but has subsequently, retracted some of his statements and clarified the objective. So I think some people are taking a more reasonable position. I do think some people in the West are a little bit shocked to discover the degree of Hamas sympathies within our universities, on our campuses, within the Arab Muslim community in places like Dearborn, and the various Muslim migrant communities in London, and France, and Germany, and large parts of Western Europe. I think they thought that this was so horrific that there wouldn't be a bunch of people rallying to the Palestinian side on this issue, and yet, unfortunately, that's what we witnessed. Well, and I've been watching a lot of this. I'm not pulling the both sides stuff. You can find a video of Israel supporters saying, "Turn it into a parking lot," annihilate them. In as much as you can also find, people on the other side saying, this was a successful military operation. I forget who the guy was, and I forget where that was. Literally called this, knowing what it was, a successful military operation. But I've seen enough of the videos of these protests where there are people who, they're either lying or they genuinely don't know what actually happened, saying, what terrorist attack? Like, we don't know the degree to which it was that. But I don't believe you when you tell me these atrocities that they committed. And then I wonder, are people living in their TikTok silos where they actually question the factual aspect of what occurred last Saturday? And I wouldn't be surprised if some do. And there's a great many people who don't know the extent of it, think they were military targets because they might have been characterized that way because anybody who lives on a kibbutz or in occupied land is deemed to be a military target. So I think there's some people out there who actually genuinely, sincerely don't even know what happened or think it was like a military outpost. But You asked the question last week, Robert. What is it? The qui bueno or qui bono?
Yeah.
What's the actual word? I
Cui
forget.
bono, cui bono.
Qui bono.
Latin phrase. Who benefits?
Who benefits? There are people who are going to say now, who benefits is either going to be Netanyahu as a political entity. He'll be distracted by this wartime prime ministership, or the state of Israel in the broad sense, in that if Netanyahu does what I think would be a mistake, and this is not out of sympathy for Hamas, it's actually just out of strategical, having lived through this cycle. If people are going to say, if he goes in, evacuates or orders the evacuation of 1 million Palestinians, they're never coming back. They're never going to come back to that land. And so there are people who are going to say this is part and parcel of Israel's broader plan to expand into all of the Gaza Strip or the occupied territories, knowing that that's what's going to happen. And qui bueno, that's going to be the answer to the question. What do you make of the argument, or what do you say to the argument that if they force evacuate 1 million people, go in on a ground war, that land would ever go back to Palestinians, and it won't just be the land that they got in a war that they didn't start, like 1967?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of problems with the blame Netanyahu assumption. One is, by most Israeli observers that I follow, including Elon on our own board, this has done very major damage to Netanyahu in Israel. That the Israelis are, according to public opinion, blaming Netanyahu for this. So I don't see how it benefits him in the near short term to put him in the conundrum of the dilemma of what to deal with Hamas, who hides behind civilian targets to commit their terror. The second, as to whether Palestinians would be forcibly evacuated, where to? No one in the Middle East will accept them, so they're not going anywhere. So then the question is, what do? Maybe they move to the southern part of the Gaza Strip. Again, I don't see any resolution or answer. Maybe they can build a bit of a buffer zone bigger than what's currently present. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty small, the Gaza Strip. Israel itself as a country, geographically, is pretty small. So it looks to me right now, and this was Alexander McCoris, who was the first to point it out. He said he wasn't sure that this is what happened, but he said you couldn't, if you were looking at it from a cui bono analysis, the first initial beneficiary was Iran, because Iran severed the Saudi ties to attempts to normalize their relations with Israel along the Abraham Accords that Trump had put into process. And in fact, for the first time under this current Saudi leadership, they talked directly to Iran. And Iran's on a current war against Israel tour. It's meeting in Qatar, where the Hamas leadership is safely ensconced. Kind of odd that that's the case. Why has the U.S. never requested extradition of the Hamas leadership there? Well, there's a lot of it. Well, why does Qatar evade public scrutiny for their funding and support and safe harboring of Hamas? It's a lot of their media networks that are heavily involved in this, maybe because they basically bought the Brookings Institution in D.C. and have bought a lot of lobbyists. People would be surprised at who might be. A lot of high-profile Republican conservatives are on Qatar's payroll. So maybe that's why there isn't much discussion of it. But right now, it looks increasingly like this was Iran was the primary beneficiary of this. That does relate to our first case of the night, which we can discuss here before broaching over to Rumble. And that is the suit brought by Stephen Miller's America First legal group, which is different than some other groups that pretend to be America First but aren't really. This is an actual one that's brought a lot of effective, successful litigation. They sued on behalf of prior victims of terror by Hamas and others that have been paid by the Palestinian Authority. The suit is that the Biden administration, as soon as it took over, released $500 million, $500 million, to NGOs whose money then, on behalf of the Palestinian Authority, whose money then went to Hamas. And that by their admission, some of it probably went to facilitate this terror attack. Problem with that is Congress passed a law after a soldier who was killed by one of these terrorists. And the reason relates to Palestinian. This is the difference between the Palestinian side and the Israeli side in terms of political leadership. You won't find an Israeli document in current existence committing itself to rewarding people who kill Palestinians or kill Muslims. Instead, Israel's still the only religiously diverse group with Jews and Muslims having a substantial presence in any country with equal rights anywhere in the Middle East. Whereas Jews have been effectively expelled from all of the Arab Muslim countries where many of them had generations going back centuries. Israel has about a 20% Arab Muslim population who has full, complete protection and rights. By contrast, the reason for the Taylor Act prohibiting money to the Palestinian Authority or any other organization related thereto is because the Palestinian Authority has what's called a pay-to-slay program. That if you murder an Israeli or someone simply visiting Israel, the act is named after a U.S. soldier who happened to be just visiting Israel as a graduate student, and the person who killed him and killed others was rewarded by the Palestinian Authority. You're given a lifetime salary. And the more you kill, the more you get. But it's not limited to soldiers. It's purely someone visiting Israel, someone who's in Israel. That's it. That's it. Doesn't matter whether it's a 5-year-old or a 50-year-old or a 95-year-old. The Palestinian Authority will write you and your family a check for life. The more you kill, the more money you get paid. Somehow the Scott Ritters and Aaron Mates and Max Blumenthals and Scott Hortons don't seem to mention the pay-to-slay program. It's somehow absent. Somehow there's some amnesia they start to suffer when they have to talk about the century-long historic commitment of the Palestinian cause to killing all Jews and expelling them entirely from the Middle East, which has been their sole and whole objective from the inception. That's why they've rejected every two-state solution that has come down the pipeline, despite the various pretenses and pretexts that may be offered by their apologist. But the federal law prohibited the Biden administration from doing it. They did it anyway. America First Legal brought suit after this incident, on the eve of this incident. Maybe it was right after this incident occurred. And a federal court has ordered expedited discovery, saying just what they have so far is substantial evidence that the Biden administration violated federal law by giving money that they knew was going to go to the hands of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority that would be used for terroristic purposes, given both have refused to stop their pay-to-slay program. And so expedited discovery has been ordered, and we're probably going to get a lot more embarrassing documents. The Biden administration basically is directly culpable in funding and financing terrorism, including this incident that just killed 14 Americans and took many others hostage.
It says it's the motion, yada, yada. Plaintiffs claim a recent production of records shows that the government knew its ESF funding in the West Bank and Gaza was benefiting Palestinian terrorists, thereby increasing the risk of terrorist attacks against the Palestinians and others similarly situated. And then let's see here, Americans so ordered. This was for sorry, what was the order?
To get expedited limited discovery related to the jurisdictional question to see if they violated the law, given the initial evidence suggests they absolutely did.
Now, but Robert, this segues into, before we go over to Rumble, everybody exclusively here, I want to bring up the tweet from John Kirby. Let me just get my hand down here. Here it is. The tweet from John Kirby, where they're saying, look, we have no evidence that Iran has any direct involvement in this, other than the fact that Iran funds Hamas at large in general. So, but whether or not they knew of this plot that apparently we're now learning was 2 years, give or take, in the making, which makes it a lot more inexplicable that Israel wouldn't have had any human intelligence on this. And it makes it a little more probable that Egypt, in fact, did give advanced warning to Bibi several days before. Kirby says in a statement, National Security Council, Kirby said last week, Iran had, quote, broad complicity, end quote, when it comes to Hamas due to their support for the terrorist organization, but that they had yet to see, quote, any specific evidence that tells us they were wittingly involved, I don't know what wittingly means, in the planning or involved in the resourcing and the training that went into this very complex set of attacks that were carried out. Robert, when they deny it, now I'm just inclined to believe that they knew. But my response to that was, this is a self-serving affirmation if it turns out that the Biden administration has been directly or indirectly funding these groups, directly or indirectly funding or releasing funds to Iran, and that if Iran had a hand in this directly or indirectly, so too, directly or indirectly, did the Biden administration. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, and what's clear, and this money, by the way, doesn't relate to the Iran money. So this is money that was going directly to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas via non-governmental organizations disguised as economic support fund payments, which Congress had specifically said cannot go to these organizations until there has been a certification by the Secretary of State. The Palestinian Authority has ended its pay-to-slay program. And so they just violated. So this is more direct violation than the indirect funding of Iran. Iran's touring with Hezbollah, meeting with Hamas, threatening Israel that they will directly intervene in the conflict. And they're the first and primary profiteer from this. They were able to sever the ongoing Trump-led originally efforts of the Abraham Accord to separate the royal governments of Arabia from the more religiously driven governments of Arabia. And so, and again, Alexander McCourse was the first one to highlight that for me. I was unaware of the degree to which that conversation was taking place. And so of the Duran. And then I watched how Iran started to profit from it immediately thereafter. It's like, well, for pure cui bono perspective right now, the only clear profiteer from this, we don't know how it's all going to play out, but as of right now, it is Iran. There are a lot of Iranian sympathizers in the Biden administration. He controversially put some key people in positions of power that have a long legacy of saying nice things. Oh, Hamas is not just really a terror organization. They're this and they're that, all that kind of garbage. 19 Americans dead, 8 verified hostages. I mean, they killed everybody. They not just Jews. They killed Israeli Muslims. They killed people who were visiting. They
Filipino nannies. I mean, they were Filipino nannies.
Oh, yeah, they kill people from all over the world. That's who they are. That's who they've always been. Just read Hamas's covenant. I mean, they're not bashful about this. All the Scott Hortons and the rest of the world just pretend not to read or listen to what Palestinian leaders themselves have said for more than a century as to what they plan on. There's a reason why the founder of the Palestinian movement, al-Husseini, was aligned with Himmler and Hitler. He volunteered for them, wanted to work for them beginning in 1933, did work for them between 1939 and 1945, was their leading advocate, and Himmler wrote love letters to the guy effectively. That's not a coincidence, folks. So the people just living in, and you can say that at the same time, think that strategically there may be bad decisions made on their side. But there's probably the biggest bad decision has been the Biden administration. Biden administration thought they could get in bed with some of the hardliners. For what purpose, I've never fully understood. I didn't understand the Obama administration's approach towards Iran. I don't favor the neocons wanting to, Lindsey Graham, let's just bomb everybody. The Babylon Bee headline read it right. Lindsey Graham says America should bomb every other country in the world because that's who he is. But that still doesn't, right? Why would we be giving money to it? Essentially, we thought we could buy them off is what it appears to be the case. And that has never worked. And so I think that, but this case is explosive politically, because if it turns out that they gave money to the Hamas organization directly or indirectly and knowingly facilitated this aid, and then you go back into your first question of cui bono, there are Iranian elements that are pro-Iran within our intelligence service, within our State Department. Biden put a lot of them, promoted a lot of them. They were starting to leak right away. Don't blame Iran for this. And now they may have been neck deep in this. Did some of those people have intelligence that they didn't share? Because Israel's intelligence is clearly limited as it applies. Whatever Mossad's reputation in the past, its over-reliance on surveillance and technology has backfired, as this incident revealed. They were way too confident that in that technology. They clearly had useless intel and great limits. And Egypt's warning was kind of a vague warning in that regard. But Egypt probably has better intelligence than Israel does. But who else does? The Five Eyes have better intelligence as to activities outside of Israel. And so did somebody in the U.S. intelligence deliberately sit on this information because it might embarrass Iran? And now it turns out, or were they all doing it to cover up the fact that they helped fund it? And that they don't want to get embarrassed that U.S. tax dollars were used for some of those weapons, for some of the tactics used, and for other things that are connected to the incident, given Americans died. The Biden administration, he already drone bombed innocent families in Afghanistan because he couldn't figure out who was who based on bad intel, bad information. including U.S. allied individuals there. And now he may have done far worse. So this case is a politically explosive case, depending on where the discovery goes.
I'm just trying to Google while you say this. Why is it called the Five Eyes? I know it's five. It's Australia, Canada, New Zealand, United Kingdom, United States. Why are they called the Five Eyes?
So it's just that there's five of them in the eyes. They have eyes around the world.
Okay. And let me just bring this one up here for the other perspective on the cui bono.
Oh, and a little tidbit. The Five Eyes is how they laundered Russiagate in efforts to do Spygate against President Trump. So the high-ranking participants in the Five Eyes in Australia and the UK were deliberately, knowingly, completely involved in the conspiracy to prevent President Trump from being elected and from derailing his presidency while he was president, including efforts to derail the Abraham Accords going on here. So you've got people that aren't on the Israeli side that have a lot of positions of power in the Western intelligence branch.
And I'll make the prediction just based on the fact that they've made a statement and they're liars. Iran, they have evidence that Iran was involved, and they have evidence that they knew that there was intelligence that they had that is going to come out, because when they come out and say, well, they've been lying every step of the way. They're lying now. That's my prediction. The cui bono, Robert, Israel was on the verge of a civil war before the attack due to the government wanting to remove judicial oversight.
Not really. I mean, there were multiple efforts to create political turmoil concerning those efforts, but that was going to be resolved between the parliamentary branch and the judicial branch sooner or later. There was, and in fact, that had been de-escalating rather than escalating on the lead up to this. So that's mostly overstated and exaggerated.
All right. And now I'll just bring up these last two chats before we head on over to Rumble. History Legends does the best Ukraine battlefield coverage. His Israel-Hamas stuff is top rate as well. History Legends.
Good. Yeah, completely. I mean, he just does. His ability to do independent military analysis without buying into propaganda is really impressive. Whichever side you're on, you can get a pretty good, and he's been predictive in his accuracy, and particularly as to Ukraine. He was the one that explained what he thought the Russian strategy was before the summer offensive began by the Ukrainians. Said the Russians are just going to sit there and swallow them up and, recreate the Battle of Bakhmut just along the entire front and just consume Ukrainian equipment and people, and that not much will budge in terms of the line. That's exactly what happened. And so in fact, they admitted this week that the counteroffensive is already over, and it was clearly, obviously unsuccessful.
I'm now subscribed to History Legends, Robert. All right, and we'll go to last one.
Yeah, if somebody knows him, I would love to have him on a sidebar. He'd be great. He's a Canadian. So
I will be able to find him and reach out. We'll get this done. Pastor Moyer says, isn't it ironic that YouTube prohibits you from giving medical advice while doing so themselves? Maybe they should block themselves. Well, on that note, and it's the perfect one, we're going to leave YouTube and go over to Rumble. Here's the link one more time, and I'll get to the Rumble rants.
I'll briefly give over the topic.
Oh, yeah, please.
Transition over. So, we're going to be covering, there's a lawsuit challenging the PrEP Act, which gives immunity to vaccine manufacturers over the COVID vaccine. Challenge that the law is unconstitutional as applied to the COVID vaccine context. We've got trans bathrooms and locker rooms issues in court. We got drag queen story time in court. We got Chevron, the doctrine that empowers the administrative state, two major cases taken up by the Supreme Court. We got Georgia election law in court, Trump's ballot access in court, TikTok sued in another effort to basically take apart big tech's power. Logan Paul's fiance sues the boxer that just recently got whooped by Logan Paul for various revenge porn allegations. The Trump classified document case, a good white paper from America First Legal. We got another federal judge decides that Washington Post can lie and libel about Robert Malone all they want. And they gave immunity to the Washington Post for suit. And we got a big win in the vaccine mandate context on two fronts. The big one is the First Amendment case. The other is a big attorney's fee that the government had to write for the people to fee lawyers that led the effort to defeat the federal vaccine mandate.
All right. And with that said, everybody, let me see. Is this the link one more time to Rumble? We're going to end it here. So let me just, there's 2,000. Let's wait until we get under 2,000, and I'm going to go end it.
And of course, if you want to do a tip, we'll have an after party at the vivabarneslaw.locals.com. All $5 tips will be answered.
Yeah, you know what? I'll send that link here one more time before we leave. This is Locals, people, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And we are ending it in 3, 2, 1.